this webinar will be the first step towards developing this module of the competence model. So we are honored to introduce you our speaker today, Lučka Kajfež Bogataj, who is a joint recipient of the Nobel Peace Prize in 2007. And she is one of Slovenia's pioneers in researching the impact of climate change as a professor of climatology at the University of Ljubljana, among others. Our question will hopefully shine light on observations in Central Europe in areas such as agriculture, livestock, pets, human health. Thank you, Professor, for being here with us. And I'd like to ask you to take the floor.
Yeah, thank you, Victor. Very nice introduction. So now I'm going to share my screen just to see the presentation. Okay, it's here. Well, I did entitle this presentation "Climate Emergency" because I really feel that climate crisis is a part of our daily life already. As you mentioned, I worked with IPCC. I still am, and being involved in climate change research for more than 20 years. And I can actually see that a lot of our predictions came true already because climate change is a bit accelerating actually. And it looks like it will do so even in the future. What would I like to share with you some thoughts is, where are we? Because this is extremely important answer. And of course, why should we care? Impacts are those so intense already that we should care. And of course, I would like to conclude with some thoughts how to avoid dangerous impacts. So where are we? I often hear people talking about climate change that will be impacting or in the future or our children and things like that. All these keywords are wrong because it has arrived. It's here already, and we can see it's dangerous, and unfortunately it will get worse. So it's not longer some future threat. It's not about children or grandchildren, it's about our generation already. So if we go through observed effect, and I will try to make a reference here also to Central Europe. But first of all, let me say that, the evidence of climate change is no longer just connected with meteorology. And there are so many scientific disciplines already showing their effects, and all these effects are pointing in the same direction, that world is warming up. Okay, glaciers. We don't have so many glaciers in Central Europe, but Alps, we know that glaciers are disappearing quite quickly. We can see a lot of changes in snow cover. Maybe this winter is sort of a special because we have some snow at higher elevation, but in the lowlands it's green. And also permafrost, which is not so important maybe for Central Europe, is retreating. There are many evidence coming from biology, like foresters. They are observing in Europe that tree lines are shifting upward. Spring is coming earlier, and this may not have always the beneficial effect, because we can see how much damage the spring frost can then cause, because the vegetation is so well advanced in February and March already. And there are new species. Talking about pests, because we are in Slovenia getting pests from Vojvodina, from Serbia, from South Italy, and Slovenian pests are moving to Czech and to Poland. So yeah, it is species are migrating, but it's not just pests, mosquitoes that are endangering our health even in Balkans Peninsula already. So yeah, it may sound fine. Wow, species are migrating, but not just beneficial species. There are a lot of evidence also from oceanographic point of view, like sea level, which is rising, sea ice that is retreating, but also meteorological effects like hotter temperature. It's not just about air, it's about rising of temperature of the rivers, of the lakes, and this is already affecting biodiversity. There are changes in humidity, and this is also quite important in the summer because we are experiencing heat waves, and heat waves with the increased humidity. This is something that not very beneficial for our health. Actually, it may cause older people and chronic patients to die of the heat. So yeah, there are many evidences. So climate change is no longer a meteorological issue or climatological issue. It's observed by biologists, geologists, whomever. Well, about temperature increase, we are all aware of that, but unfortunately, it's not just temperature that is changes, and sometimes changes in the water cycle are much more important because temperature, okay, it's going up, but water is the source of life, and the whole world is warming. But regarding water, you can see on the lower panel that we have winners and we have losers. Where who is the winner? The winner is those countries where with a higher temperature, they have more water, more precipitation, wetter climate. And the losers definitely are those where this trend is opposite. So temperature goes up, but there is less precipitation and more evaporation. You can see Brazil and Argentina, two neighboring countries. Argentinians, no problem with climate change so far. Brazil is burning and having problems with drinking water already. But it's the same in Europe. Northern Europe may experience some more water, but Central Europe, but especially Mediterranean area, this is already very critical. It's about not just Mediterranean area, it's Southern Mediterranean, it's Northern Africa, it's Syria, it is Pakistan, it's India. So we are talking, not to mention Africa, of course. You all see these reddish, orange tones, which means drier. So the majority of population which lives in China, India, Africa will have huge problems with water, or may I say we already have these problems also in Central Europe. So we can see from this slide already that climate change is not affecting everybody in the same way. So it is heavily unjust. Unfortunately, people in developing countries will have much more problem than people, for instance, in Central Europe. But even Central Europe will have much more problems than Scandinavia, for example. We can see that summer temperatures in Europe are really increasing faster than average annual temperature. And the last 10 years were the hottest years in the record. We can also see that the majority of impact so far, I mean, not majority, but the most, how should I say, the most prominent effects are not in the Central Europe, but in European Arctic, when you can see that temperature there are increasing much more than in the south of Europe. And of course, if the temperature goes up, sea ice extent goes down, which means that European thermostat is already broken. What do I mean by broken thermostat? It means that especially in winter, we will have extreme weather. We could have totally warm and green winters, but on the other hand, we can expect huge amounts of snow with a warm temperature, but huge amounts of snow, also in the lowlands. This is because the sea on the northern part of Europe is no longer under the ice, so evaporation is bigger, and in winter time it means unexpected weather. So it sounds ironic. With warming, we may have more snow somewhere, but unfortunately, this is pure physics. This is how things go. and we don't really connect that snow thing and winter thing with climate change many times. Yes, glaciers. One of our neighboring glacier in Austria, it is under the Pasterze Glacier, under the highest mountain in Austria, Großglockner. We can see that it already disappeared. But may I draw your attention, those who are planning some visits to Austria, maybe next summer, this summer, please take your children or take your students, or you go by yourself to see that, because there's an excellent museum when you can see how these things develop. You can actually walk under the glacier, what is left of it, and to see with your own eyes what climate change is in the action. So this is something that I really recommend, because you can park car here, so it's very easy accessible. Okay, sea level rise it may not be so important for Hungary, but also for Hungarian tourists who come to our seashore or Croatian coast. We can see that the increase is even faster in Mediterranean, in Adriatic Sea than in the rest of the Europe. These dark tones means 5 millimeters per year, which is already causing havoc in Venice, in many parts of the low-lying Italy, or in other places. It's not about flooding, permanent flooding, but when with a high water, with aqua alta, the damages are getting worse from the year to year already, not to mention the future. Water, water is the problem. So we can see how Europe suddenly is divided into blue parts of Europe and red Europe. Red meaning the lower amounts of water in the rivers, which means that problems with hydropower. Many of these countries, I know the Balkan countries, they all count on hydropower as a renewable source of energy, but there will be problems with water, which means that there should be some extra dams built or things like that, which are not ecological, very friendly. But on the other hand, if you can see UK, you can see northern countries, they will have more water in the rivers, but this may not be so good, because more water in the rivers means flooding. So it's not a winning combination, like we will have only beneficial effects. So this is something that is already observed. This is not the future. Okay, so the primary cause, of course, of the climate change is the way we use energy. It's about how much energy we use. So it's definitely the story of in exponential increase. And you can see that in black, in red, in blue, this is fossil fuel energy. And we burn that stuff. That's another problem. It's not about just using the fossil fuels. It's about what a primitive way we use them. We burn that precious materials. Okay, but when you burn something, the outcome is CO2, water, and air pollution. I'm not talking about air pollution today, but maybe we should, because air pollution is getting worse also in the middle, in the Central Europe. Still, there's no big step forward. The major problem of burning is CO2. And this CO2 that is burned in our chimneys, and also it also arises from the land use change when you cut the forest. And globally, there's a lot of forest being cut. So then this is also a release of CO2. This extra CO2 then goes about 40% in the atmosphere, about third into the biomass in the woods, which is okay. We don't have any problem here. It is very nice that actually nature is sponsoring us. But a quarter goes to the ocean because CO2 is soluble. And this is not good, because when you put CO2 in the ocean, we have more acid seas. Ocean acidification is also an evil twin of climate change. But speaking just about warming, the problem is with this CO2 here, because this CO2 in the atmosphere stays there for a long, long time. Comparing to our lives, we can say it stays there forever. We're talking about 200, 300 years. And of course, this accumulation has been going on for years and years. It's not from yesterday. And we can see now that last year the concentration was 410 ppm, which was compared to the last million of years, far the biggest concentration. And from start of industrial revolution to now, we almost have a half more, or 50% more CO2 in the atmosphere. And of course, this is making problems. So for all those who are climate change deniers or think that CO2 is harmless, this is just another guess. They could not be more wrong, because this is in such a short time, this increase. Yes, in the past, there were variations because of the ice ages, but these variations were small. And also it took 100,000 years to change CO2, but we changed this concentration in only 100 years. So this speed is also extremely dangerous. So we have now enhanced greenhouse effect. The average temperature of the planet is already 1 degree higher. The contribution of water vapor is about 31 degrees, and of CO2 is 2 degrees normal in the past and 1 extra degree. And with the more CO2, this 1 degree can become 2 degrees, 3 degrees, 4 degrees. People from chemistry, they see no limits of CO2 in the atmosphere. We just can pump it and pump it. It will not stop. I mean, it's not like water vapor. Water vapor stays in the atmosphere only 8 days. In 8 days, it is back because we have a very quick water cycle. But CO2 cycle is very slow, as I mentioned. Okay, other greenhouse gases, they also have an impact, but not so much, because their quantity is far lower than in CO2. People often talk about methane. Yes, methane is very potent greenhouse gas, but the quantity of methane is 1,000 times smaller than CO2. That's why we always talk just about CO2. As I said, future is there to see. There is not one future, there are futures. The best case future would be the increase of 2 degrees, but for that future, we have to stop emitting greenhouse gases and even suck some CO2 out of the air by planting forests, for instance. The worst case future is when we just burn more and more coal, and we can end up with 1,000 ppm of CO2 in the atmosphere, which means the global increase of 5 degrees. But globally 5 means for Arctica already 11 degrees. Even 2 degrees for Central Europe means 3.5 degrees. So don't be fooled by global average. Global average is on this part of the Europe much higher, regional average, because of our land situation. It's very, it's geography, more or less. So what to do? So we can see here the best case future, and this is sort of a worst case. But even in the best case, we can see that temperature in the Arctica go up to the 4 or 5 degrees. But in worst case, which I don't want to comment, we have increase of temperature 11 degrees so here, and also in Central Europe more than 7, which is very hard to explain what does that means for the ecosystems. More or less, it means a collapse of ecosystem as we know it. And these are problems with water. Even in the best case, Central Europe, Mediterranean area will be heavily impacted by drought. But in worst case, practically the whole Europe will be, except some parts of Russia, in a very, very, very complex situation, if I may call it so. These are global models, and the resolution here is not very good. So we can go from this global model with many regional models into finer scale. So you can get some scenarios even in more detailed scale when Central Europe is bigger. But more or less, it's the same story. We can see here winter, we can hear summer, upper panel temperature, lower panel rain. And we can see that in winter, the warming most pronounced in Scandinavia. But even in winter, problems with water to the south, less problematic winter in Central Europe, maybe even 10% precipitation more. But in summer, when the agriculture is active, practically up to Denmark, Finland, lack of water with extreme warming in southern part of the Europe. So 4 degrees warmer, half less rain in the summer. This is something that we cannot even imagine year by year. Yeah, it's something like that happened in 2003 with a lot of casualties and a lot of practically collapse of European agriculture. You can study year 2003 and you will have an insight into the future if we don't mitigate climate change. This is also a graph I like, because on this graph you can actually say to the people what kind of future is there for them. For instance, people in Germany, they will have, Berlin will have more or less similar climate like Rome today, which may sound fine, but believe me, Berlin infrastructure is not made for Rome, and Berlin people don't have Roman way of life. So it's something that is normal for Rome can be a shock for Berlin. Not to mention Madrid, Spain. Look at Madrid, future climate, it will be mostly like beginning of Sahara Desert. People from Helsinki living like in Zagreb today or Sarajevo. So yeah, it's a huge challenge for urbanism, for city planners, for everybody, I guess. But it's sort of a visualization that people can connect more with the models, which usually are very blunt. Impacts. So yeah, European Urban Environmental Agency has many reports warning about possible effects. So if you look at the Central Europe, more or less, as I said, the problem is summer rainfall, which will be less, soil erosion, drought, water stress, and of course yields if we don't have irrigation, yields may go down, but also flooding, maybe not so, or as I mentioned, extreme snowfall or things like that that can make problems in the winter. But it's everywhere. It's even in the Scandinavia, where there is some more promising, like warmer and more water, they can expect new diseases, new pests. So practically there will not be winners. We all will lose, but some will lose more. So I would like to put things in that perspective. Agriculture, of course, suffers already, but there will be some positive things as well. We should not just be negative. There will be longer growing season in cool areas. So maybe we can grow some crops which we could not grow in Central Europe before, like cotton or tobacco, because it will be warmer. But still, I believe that majority of impacts in agriculture may not be positive. Especially because I don't see European farmers as a very, they're so conservative. They don't want to change much. They don't want to listen what climatologists are saying. They just want to have this business as usual and they are usually older people. They're not so much young farmers that would comprehend the situation. So because with adaptation, these climate change effects may not be so harmful, but farmers, at least in Slovenia, they are so conservative. I don't see much, but also European agricultural policy is not right. It's still, you can see these old patterns, no new approaches, which is not good in case of climate change. We can see agricultural productivity. This is sort of a projection, what may happen in the future. Okay, I said we will have problems in Europe, but still problems in Europe will be much less problematic than Africa, than Southern America, even the States, not to mention India. So this means that when majority people live and they are really dependent on agriculture, like in India, this will be a disaster. And we can foresee already climate refugees because, without water and without food, you become a refugee very quickly. And where will refugee go? Refugees will go to Europe because less impact, they will go to the Northern America. It's logical. And they are already coming. And sometimes we are not seeing that climate change is already driving people away. For instance, in Syria, Syrian crisis began with the drought. And Syrian farmers first went to Damascus, and then Damascus could not cope with additional 8 million people. And then it just collapsed. And then we got refugees in Europe. So there are a lot of things already happening because of climate change, but this is masked then by religion, by politics, and whatever. But we don't want to see that very closely. This is European situation. We can see problems in Spain, France, Italy, also on Balkan side. Okay, not so much problems in Hungary, the Middle Europe, but still you can see this is minus 5 to 15%, and we are talking about wheat, maize, the major crops that are important here. But some problems can be solved by irrigation. But still, these are problems that are, maybe we will all become dependent on Russia, or because in Russia they could produce more food. But being dependent on country is like being dependent on gas. We are dependent on gasoline or gas with Russia, for instance. But they can change the mind and say we will not give you that. So it's not a very bright story. Health is another issue. We have now COVID situation, but there will be much more new diseases because of climate change. Our air pollution will become worse with a higher temperature. There will be new vectors like ticks, for instance. They are already going to Sweden, and ticks are a vector of many diseases. Allergies actually will also get worse because of the different temperatures and different cocktails of pollen. There will be problems with heat. They already are here. Problems related to water and food. It's not just malnutrition, but also different diarrheal diseases with a lack of water. Also, I believe that in situations when you have to cope with extreme weather, there are also mental health problems because it's a stressful situation, and this is also important aspect of health, and we don't talk much about that. With the civil conflict, with migration, people don't feel happy. They don't feel safe. They feel endangered. And unfortunately, when I talk to the medical doctors and ask them, are you prepared for all this? They are not prepared. Like they were not prepared from COVID situation. They are not prepared for this, which is very sad, because when we can see what consequences we get when, oh, sorry, what happened now? Do you see that on your screen as well? I hope it's fine. No, the medicine is not ready. Even in the very rich countries, they don't have a master plan how to cope with all these aspects. I feel that something is happening to my PowerPoint presentation because I cannot move forward. Okay, so where are the big tipping points? We can see that what will come as a major threat to Central Europe: reduced agricultural productivity, water insecurity, extreme weather. Of course, collapse of ecosystems can happen easily, and increased health risks. So there are 5 categories we should really be careful about. We should prepare for that, adapt if possible. Because if we don't, this means the displacement of people. And even if we don't move, it means increased poverty, which we don't need in Europe in the middle of the 21st century. So where do we stand when we talk about climate change mitigation? Unfortunately, we would have to follow this 2-degree path, which was recommended by Paris Agreement. Science, actually, we said it would be much better if we do more, if our efforts are a bit more intense, that we follow 1.5 path. But this means that already next years we will have to cut emissions by more than 5 to 7% per year, every year. But actually, national plans so far are not pointing in Paris Agreement. COVID situation makes everything worse. Last year, there were no negotiation at all because of the COVID. This year, countries will meet again in Glasgow. Maybe they will reach some agreement, but this is a huge gap between what is reality and what should be done. And this huge gap is why young people are so angry, why Greta and many millions of other children protested, because it's not fair that our leaders promise this when they ratified Paris, but doing this is not fair. And it is not fair also for our generation, not just for our future one. Did COVID help? Yes, a bit. This year, for 2020, the emissions will be a bit lower because of the COVID. So we will achieve about 7% lower emissions, but we are all waiting to get business as usual. We all want to travel again. We want to live normally, which means that maybe next year, if COVID goes away, we will, I don't know, travel twice as much to compensate the previous year. And this means that there will be no change. So COVID situation will not change anything, unfortunately. So I will stop here. Of course, there is a lot of things that could be done. We could avoid the worst scenario. And the most important move that I see is the first one. We should use energy more efficient. It's not about renewables so much. It's about stop wasting energy. And we waste energy because we have huge cars. We could easily build a car that just needs 2 liters of diesel per 100 kilometers, but they don't want to do it. So our cars need 7 liters. We should stop wasting our food, because when we waste food, we waste energy. We should think about living in a smaller, maybe, or not just smaller houses. It's about also air conditioning and things like that. It's so funny now when I'm working from home a lot. It's stupid to have one office here, but then in Ljubljana, it's another office waiting for me. You know, it's doubling the space. So there are many, many ways how to use energy more efficient. Of course, we have to switch the type of energy as well, but first efficiency, then switching. And as I said, we should improve also carbon sinks. We should get CO2 out of the atmosphere. Sooner or later, we will have to. And the best is done by planting new forest or improved forest management, and also improved land management. So agriculture has to do a lot of this. And we should also think about bioenergy with carbon capture and storage. And the last but not least is that we will have to change our behavior and lifestyle, which is maybe the worst part of this. Maybe COVID we did learn something. It would be nice to learn the difference between what we want to have and what we actually need. And I think that COVID did give us this lesson. It was very clear what we needed. And it's very clear what we don't need, but just want to have. So it's about shopping, it's about doing things. But it will be hard because so far policy is not on our side. Central European policy is far from being sustainable. It's ignoring climate change in a way. And this could be really fatal for us, because if you ignore climate change, you ignore adaptation. And adaptation will be necessary regarding extreme weather, regarding change agriculture. And if we don't adapt, then there's not so bright future before us. So I will stop here. Thank you for your attention, and I'm hoping for some discussion now.
Thank you very much, Lučka. And I think I like this last slide because it also draws attention to the opportunities ahead. And some of you might already know that this project, the Sustainaware project, is focusing on this point, the lifestyle and behavior changes, to bring new mindsets by new ways of education. As you also pointed out earlier, that some sectors, some people, main actors in this process are not ready to change to new processes. So this is what we're aiming for, to bring this type of thinking to younger generations. And I think there were several examples from your presentation, which are these type of real life examples that we can feel today also in our region, and it's not so much future scenarios that we're talking about. And at this point, I'd like to bring in and open up the floor to our audience, and open this Q&A with all of you, and hear your remarks and feedbacks. I see that there are already some questions here that were put in the chat box. I see a mention of a previous documentary from Lučka that someone has mentioned. Would you maybe like to say something about this or anything else?
Yeah, I was not looking at the chat, so can you just maybe repeat the question so I will know?
Yes.
Maybe I would suggest, Nea Kajfež, if you can ask the question or prepare it. But as I see, she just wanted to share a documentary film from Slovenian national television.
Okay.
But we have actually a second question here from Julia.
Mm-hmm.
And she's actually asking if we see already the effect of climate change on our health. Can you please elaborate a bit on health and climate?
Yeah. So we have evidence, because I was involved in one project about heat waves and how these heat waves actually affect healthy people who work in that conditions, so workers. And there are a lot of analyses that actually heat is already killing. The mortality in the heat waves is much higher, especially in the cities, in category over 70 years women. So they are the most endangered. So if you look at the statistics, on those days who are very hot, you can see increased mortality of elderly people. Of course, on the death certificate, they don't put heat wave. They put heart stroke or whatever. It's not like in COVID now when you separate deaths. But it is so, heat is killing people. And also there are a lot of reports of young workers who have to, in building industry, in construction, who have to work at 40 degrees. And these employers don't have this attitude that they would bring them water, cold water, or proper clothes, or give them possibility to cool off in special comoras. So they are not dead, but they can have cramps or headaches and a lot of minor problems because they are young and healthy. But so this is definitely proven impact. And there, of course, the other impacts are connected to the insects, like mosquitoes, who can bring some diseases already into the northern part. And this can be also quite problematic. So it's a vector analysis. So this is for sure. But there's a lot of guessing as well. It's like one of the guessing, it is research, ongoing research, that in the warmer temperature also antibiotics could not work in the same way. So maybe they will not help us because of the higher temperatures. So even in the medication could be some new insights. But all the evidence suggests that the most vulnerable will be children, chronic people who are already have chronic diseases, and the elderly population, and of course homeless or people who live in poverty.
Victor, actually, may I actually, since I can't see any other question in the chat box, may I ask something? I mean, in my humble opinion, right, this COVID crisis, it's like a movie trailer for the climate crisis in the future. But okay, we already, we can see the results already. The results are already here now, but I think the mindset is crucial, right? And I believe we could grab the opportunity of COVID situation and change this mindset. I mean, we have this European Green Deal, right? We have this big budget on the European level, this resilience or recovery plan, right?
Recovery.
Yeah, exactly, recovery plan. But it seems that we don't have really good ideas for green projects, to really green projects, not just painted green, but really green projects. So I don't know, what is your opinion on that? Are we doing all the same mistakes, or we cannot change this mindset to be, I don't know, innovative? I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, it is, this is not just the problem of Central Europe. All the world has now this money. So it's a recovery fund in China, recovery fund in US, and it's in Europe. European Union is quite strict because they really want to have about 40% of this money to be spent on climate change issues. So it's about mostly about mitigation, I guess, but also it wouldn't be wrong if we use that for adaptation as well, adaptation projects. But the problem is that politicians, or maybe I will be cruel now, very cruel, but it's my life experience, that the world or Europe or Slovenia or Hungary is run by men around between 60 and 70 years old, very, I would say, not so right-wing oriented, but more right than left. So people who really don't care much about what happens in the next 20 years. We have in Austria a very young chancellor. He's about, I don't know, 30. So with the younger politicians, who are also better educated, because, you know, for the generation who is now 70, they did not know ecology in school. And if you don't hear about that thing, if you don't ponotraniš je, kako je po angliško? Okay, if you don't actually grow up, that these are your values, you cannot change your color when you're 16. So we are dealing with the, and of course, all previous generation of politicians came to power with help of industry, or with the help of the other decision makers. And who had the most money to put this on the power? Even Angela Merkel, she's wonderful. She's far, could be an example. Even she came to power because of German automotive industry. And automotive industry, of course, is fossil fuels industry. So how can you expect that they change mindset? So I can understand. And so I remember the Trump era, which is now finished. But you know, Trump, he was honest. He said, I don't care about climate change, but our leaders, they are so worried. They cannot sleep because of climate change, yeah? But they don't do anything. So which is worse, actually? But politics can change mindset very quickly when people protest. So it's a matter of critical mass. 10 protesters on a big square don't change anything. You know, I don't know, 20,000 protesters on a small square change everything. So I'm not saying that we have to protest on the streets. There are other ways. But aren't we lazy as well? Did we do our homework? Probably not. So it's on the both sides now, this gap. So one has to be smarter than the other. So if we are opposition, we have to be smarter, and we have to propose, I don't know, the project that will be accepted for both sides in a way. I don't know how to do it, but it's this path situation that we are now has been going on for a long time. It's not new. It's not new, but we are not doing progress.
Thanks. And I see there are some more questions and comments regarding the recovery plans, for example, that the EU pointed out. Would you like to spell out? Would you like to elaborate on this one, perhaps?
Yeah, I think that, you know, according to European policy, civil society should have a final say how to spend this money. But this cannot happen overnight. For instance, in Slovenia, this plan, recovery plan, is almost a hidden document. You cannot even go. Okay, you can go if you register, and it's very complicated. This is diametrally wrong. People should see this project, should comment on them, and should comment, of course, constructively, not just I'm against that. And maybe mitigation projects will be hard to get. Like, I don't know, we want to have, I don't know, electrical cars. This may not be a good suggestion. But going for win-win-win situations, like let's refurbish our houses to be more energy efficient of our building. This could mean new jobs, could mean for some companies big business, insulation. So this could appeal to politicians as well. So we have to find these win-win projects that are acceptable to, this is just one example, and maybe we should also insist that part of this recovery money should go for education as well. Because still in our schools, we don't have a curriculum on climate change. We say our children know better, but actually they do not know as much as they should. Not to mention the climate change campaign. So this money should be also spent in this way. And of course, for adaptation. I think that adaptation is needed in every domain. We need safe bridges, we need rivers that flow, or we need flood protection, we need protection from avalanches or whatever. We have to adapt our tourism for new things. So maybe these plans would be acceptable for those who rule now, because they are not so much into the fossil fuel business. So I see compromise, but not on the expense of climate change, because we have to do a lot of things. It doesn't really matter when we start, maybe. So our compromise would be that we will start maybe more on adaptation side than on mitigation.
When it comes to adaptation, there is a question from a participant about marine protected areas as climate change ocean observatories. How could these play a role in adaptation measures, for example?
Yeah, I think that adaptation, when we talk about coastal areas and different ecosystems connected with water on one on other thing, it is maybe we don't have much chances to do some artificial adaptation. So this adaptation should be very natural based. So things that were there in the past. I don't see walls that will function at the seaside. I more or less see things that prevent erosion and things like that. So in that sense, they can help to find the solutions that are more connected to the nature than to I don't know, technology.
And we've seen in your slides the sea level rise, for example, expected in the Adriatic, which is the closest to our countries. How could a coastal city like Venice adapt with nature-based solutions when most of its coast is actually human-built infrastructure?
Yeah, I don't see any solution for Venice, unfortunately, because Venice is been even technologies. If we use technologies, even technology cannot save Venice. It can save Venice when the sea level rise is about 60 centimeters. It cannot save Venice when it's 80, but probably it's more likely to be 80. So, you know, this is really hard to say. Also, it's not just Venice. It's like having cows in eastern Slovenia. We will have to say stop it. It's no longer possible. So say goodbye to Venice, say goodbye to, I don't know, milk production in lowlands. These are hard cuts, but sometimes this will have to be done, because I think that people would understand, and the damage on the long term will be smaller if we, for instance, it's no, okay, Venice is tourism, but we will have flooded some land that belongs to farmers. So relocate these farmers in the beginning, not when it's high time or already flooded. Give them another opportunity to start somewhere else. This is action that have to be done slowly and with a lot of care, I guess, for the human well-being. So if we start early enough, but we have to decide. We will not be able to keep everything, that's for sure.
And we know a lot of this is driven by consumption, by individual demand. For example, as you brought up, for dairy or for beef and meat. As a scientist, as a climate scientist, how do you see individual contributions today? How much can this play a role compared to systemic change?
Well, the problem is that people usually are not even aware of their impact on, I don't know, climate or whatever. Because I can see people who are, I don't know, separating garbage, and they think that they've done a lot of things, very important business, or people who are unplugging mobile phone from the electricity, like, wow, now I'm saving energy. You know, mobile phone charging is exactly needs so much energy, which I extra use because my husband can park car directly. He parks, you know, like this and that. But I park like a bit here and there. So I make it 100 meters because I could not park. So if I learn to park, right, I can have my mobile in the electricity all life. So people are not aware that flying, for instance, the food wastage or the dairy production, for instance, is crucial, not to mention the usage of car and heating of our houses. So, but it differs because one student has a different lifestyle than one adult or one who have to travel, but they don't know because we have the problem with energy illiteracy. We need energy literate people. Then we will have a chance to fight climate change. So, and this is what I meant by curriculum in school. Because I have students who are 19 years old and they never ever had in their hands the bill for electricity. They don't know what kind of electricity they use at home. They don't know how much it costs 1 kilowatt hour. They don't know how many kilowatt hours per month they use, and such people can be manipulated very easily, and that's why we have so much actions which are not pointing at the, and I don't also like that saying, small steps. It's too late for small steps because with the small steps, we will come very close, but we need huge stones to build the palace right now. Otherwise, it's too late.
I'm glad you brought in the issue of curriculums and school modules on energy, because as we are developing this competence model for climate education, we aim to use this opportunity to also teach and educate, inform about the energy mix and where electricity comes from in our region. And I see there's also a comment here or a question here from Nea. Do you think that people feel threatened in terms of lifestyle when we talk about climate change?
Of course they feel, because there's always two sides. One side is, I don't know, our side saying that actually we will still have all those things we need, but we will have to say no to the things that we only want to have. And to say that in a very, with illustrations, like our garage, we have a garage like many people. And when I went to our garage a year ago and I counted our helmets, I counted 17 helmets. We have 3 helmets for the mountaineering. We have 3 helmets for the skiing. We have 3 helmets for the biking. And we have all sorts of old helmets which are not so fashionable. We don't need 17 helmets. And I could live. This is one way of saying. But if you look at the other side, they will say, I don't know, ecologists want you to go back to the Middle Ages and to burn your candle. You can always manipulate people who are not aware of the numbers and facts, but you cannot those who are. And that's why our curriculum in school, when we entered Europe, Slovenian curriculum lost about 10% of mathematics, 10% in physics, 10% in chemistry, on the expense of social sciences, because we lost identity as a Yugoslavia and we need to find a new identity as Europeans. So we have to put that in curriculum. Okay, I don't mind, but not an expense of natural science. But of course, you can manipulate people easier. They believe in I don't know, if I drink this tea, I will lose 10 kilos. And if I have a pyramid, I don't know, my brain will work better. So this is the effect after 30 years. I'm angry, but I'm a teacher and I know what I'm talking about.
Yes, I absolutely understand, and I think many of us feel threatened both by impacts and as well as disruptions that we will have to see in society, especially knowing more about climate change and the impacts. So I think it's a very fair and relating question to all of us, which leads us to to a conclusion that factfulness is important, that we are aware, and that we also educate and inform others and our peers. But I'm sure that most of the people in this webinar are aware of that and are working towards this. Okay, one last round for questions. Please, if anyone from the audience wants to pose a question, feel free to turn on your camera and your mic and ask it. There is one last chance for such contribution.
It was very intense. Maybe people just need some time to digest because yeah, it is it's such a big issue actually, climate change. Because if you want to be smart on this field, you have to be a bit of climatologist. You have to know a lot about economic model. You have to know about energy. You have to know how people react. And you know, we don't have super people to do that. So a very well mixture of profiles working together can have a chance to make a difference. And yes, facts, of course, because we have all this false news and fake news and intentionally fake news, and in combination with ignorance, then you get what. So for me, it was COVID experience the most important, exactly that, because I did not so much follow the COVID itself, but how people reacted. Is there COVID? There isn't COVID. It's not. It's false. And that's why I know that if they do such a horrible, I mean, showed such an ignorance in COVID situation, what about climate change? So they exactly could be manipulated in this way. So our work has only begun. So I try to make also some positive, to learn something of this. And so I really appreciate projects like yours.
I agree. And thank you so much, Lučka, for being here with us and sharing these insights.